Are you falling into the trap of confirmation bias? Do you believe first impressions are the absolute truth about a person? In reality, first impressions can be misleading. Someone can be having a bad day, they can be anxious, nervous, or simply need time to build trust with you. It's important that you go into every situation getting to know someone in the moment, not from a preconceived idea or some observation of facts that you think are true, and you absolutely don't know for sure if it's the absolute truth. My name is Alicia AMMorgan. I am an aerospace and industrial engineer who loves to connect the dots and work with people to create magical moments of impact. I've done that in Fortune 500 companies in aviation and defense through project management. I've also done that in the nonprofit sector, leading programs in after-school programs and STEM education programs, as well as higher education initiatives supporting workforce readiness. I have done a lot of relationship building, and I have been wrong about some first impressions that I've had of other people, and some people have been wrong about first impressions of me. Today, I want to talk to you about building lasting connections and moving beyond first impressions and considering if a confirmation bias is hindering the possibility of this relationship blossoming into something dynamic. Today's agenda is about beginning in the moment and not with the end in mind, as we often do, and learning when that confirmation bias is becoming problematic for you, and reflecting on the beginning. Here we are, and let's uncover where we can go together. And really understanding that we have to give each other's grace and let go of being completely right. Now, the definition of a confirmation bias is that we're confirming some beliefs. We're researching it, we're getting referrals or something, and we think it's all facts, and it may not be objective. And so how do we really expand our worldview to learn more and be more inquisitive? The confirmation bias is very common, as this quote says. We can research to find out information, and sometimes we're doing that to settle on what we believe to be true. And it can block you from going further, especially as a leader. So why this is important as a leader to recognize where confirmation bias may be coming into play is that it limits your perspective. You can make poor decisions and judgment based on what you're trying to confirm, and you're not hearing what's actually going on. It can hinder authentic relationships because you don't value other people's viewpoint. You only want to listen to what you want to hear and take sound bites and figure out how to confirm that. And we know that can be problematic in today's world. And it reduces team morale. If someone feels like, I can't come to you with information, you're not listening to me, my feedback to you, it doesn't matter, you're only holding us accountable. And so that team morale goes down, and it will stifle your creativity in your organization. The flaws of first impression, as we talked about, who you meet on a different day, it may not be who they are all of the time. It can be, but there's a possibility that it's not. And so we can't think about in absolutes. Oh, this person is terrible. I don't get along with them. It's always going to be like that. And I know we have to think about reputation that we hear about people, but as we learn, things can change or they can remain the same. But we have to give some opportunity for it to be what it is in the moment and not based on all previous information that we may have. And then we make sure that we're not drawing these conclusions that we're talking about and asking those questions that we need and giving thoughtful responses and allowing the relationship to evolve over time. Feedback matters. So we're talking about confirmation bias. If we have a teammate who may have some troubles, or you may deem that as the person that's always negative, if you speak to that person like that, in a negative way, it can have an impact on how they see themselves in the team and how they perceive you. And then it can hinder the growth. So think about what you're saying. It's not trivial. You're not just saying it in a matter of fact way. It has impact. And thinking about building authentic relationships over time, you see this heart. And then the spirit of love of building authentic relationship is letting other voices exist. And that means voices that are different than you, and actively listening to pay attention and not have judgment on someone, and having empathy to understand all aspects of the situation and how consistently show up. So letting other voices exist all the time and understanding that dynamic is how we move forward. So again, and that love. We think about the empathy map. It's a powerful tool when we go into situations. And we talked about earlier, our confirmation bias. You're trying to confirm what you think, feel, hear, and see. But here's the other side. The other person has their own viewpoint of what's going on. And so you want to understand all these dynamics in a situation to really deeply get to understand a person. So what are they seeing in the environment and thinking and feeling, right? And what's really going on, the worries and aspirations they may have, as well as you have your own, and what they hear, what other people saying, and how that plays into that interaction of the impressions that you have of other people. And say and do, does it match, right? And I know we say that action speaks louder than words, but words and actions matter equally in situations and how we form our impressions of other people. And the pain, like the pain points we have, also what triggers you. So you can be triggered by something someone says that is familiar to you, and you make an assessment of the outcome because it's confirming what an experience that you may have. And it's not, again, we're not in this moment. So really be mindful of that, the fear and frustrations and the gains that people have of the relationship. And we want to make sure it's not just simply transactional. Give me this, you give me that. And you want to make sure it's transformation. And transformation happens, keyword, over time. And we talked about throughout this presentation how much relationships evolve over time and giving that space for that to happen. A great book recommendation that I have is David Brooks' is How to Know a Person, The Art of Seeing Others Deeply and Being Deeply Seen. And in order for that to occur, there have to be some follow-up questions and thinking about red flags. Is a red flag really a red flag, or it's a trigger for you? Or is it a lack of empathy? Is it a confirmation bias? You're trying to confirm something that you think to be true that may not be the absolute truth. So we have to really think about those red flags. Is it really a red flag? Or is it a trigger inside of you? Is it a confirmation bias? It's a lot to think about if you want to get to deeply know someone and someone to give you that benefit of the doubt. As people get to know me, I am a very introspective person, very analytical. So I process things very slowly. I'm trying to gather information. And someone may perceive that I'm not opening up enough, that I'm not outgoing enough. And I've had people say that initially I thought you were this way, but I know that you had to get to know me better. And so imagine if everyone thought, oh, Alicia's not open enough, she's not talking enough, etc., then that means that she's not outgoing and not collaborative. So you see how that making those absolute statements can be harming, and people can change and evolve over time. And then we have to think about that in terms of reputation. You said reputation follows you consistently, who you are, but again, you can change. And the way that that change will be welcome is that over time, you see that shift and that transition happening. So it's a lot of things to consider when you want to get to deeply know a person and want someone to get to deeply know you. So tell me more is powerful. And I think about that is I was leading an education program, and it had been going on for several years before I got there. And the partner school had stopped showing up and didn't respond well to our team. So I discovered some confirmation biases on both sides. So our team believed that, oh, we designed these programs, this is what they need. They're ungrateful, they're non-responsive, they're rude. So they need us more than we need them. And these programs are free to their students. On the other side, the school believed, hey, you all are not listening to us. Our needs are changed. Your programs don't match what we need. They're not engaging as they used to. You're not taking feedback. So now there's the clash of beliefs going on. And how can we get beyond that? So our team, they were a little bit hesitant and they didn't want to change a little bit. They think that, why do we have to change? This is what they need. And so there were some concessions that had to be made. We had to make some adjustments in the program and how we deliver it and what they wanted and how it met the state standards for the school. We had to incorporate that as well. So you see, when you have a confirmation bias and you stand on it as the absolute truth, you can become stubborn and resistant to the change that needs to happen for the next level of engagement to happen and to continue building that lasting connection. So the first impression was that they needed us more than we needed them, and that changed. And the first impression of them, of us, is that you used to be responsive to us. Now you're not, and you are becoming like dictators to what our needs are versus understanding what they are. So that's a mouthful. So deeply knowing a person, so it can change over time. Initially, it was all great, and now it's not. And how can we get back to maintaining that relationship? And remember, we don't always just see through our eyes. We are living through our experiences with one another. And we have to be mindful of how that can be affecting our relationships over time. This is a great book. It will really open your eyes, and it can also restore some relationships that you thought were unrecoverable. And you follow steps and you ask more follow-up questions and you begin to understand what happened to the relationship, or you have a breakthrough because you have a conversation, a courageous conversation that needed to happen. Now, overcoming that confirmation bias is that awareness. We have to continue that awareness and not falling into the trap of that confirmation bias. And when we are feeling frustrated with someone about a situation, ask yourself, is it because of a confirmation bias? Are there more questions that I can ask, a follow-up question? Am I being open-minded to new information that's happening? And reflect on the relationship over time and where changes may have occurred. So it's a lot of questions to ask yourself. The final takeaway, a first impression is not always the sum of all parts of a person, because we have to think about, are they nervous, they're anxious, are they having a bad day, or did we come into the situation very defensive? Is there a confirmation bias that's occurring? And so thinking about all those things. So if you're applying these tips into your life, you're asking yourself, okay, my feedback, is my feedback helpful? Am I saying things that I think are trivial that really matter, and I'm not taking that in consideration on the other side? Do I have empathy? What do I think, feel, and see and hear? And does the other person think, feel, hear, and see? What are they gaining? What am I gaining? And what are the pain points? Are the triggers that may be affecting this relationship to build more over time? And how understanding that through reflection, I had the wrong first impression about someone. Share your experiences and thoughts in the comments section. I love to hear more about how you had a first impression and how it was incorrect, or how you've learned that first impressions are not always a lasting impression and that they can change, and how you build lasting connections. I hope that you found this video enjoyable. And remember, building lasting connections is moving beyond first impressions so that you can deeply get to know a person.